And today I might go ahead, instead of explaining the terms, now do the work, because I've explained most of the terms, how they work and how things go. So what we want here today is for us to be able to add a new list to our lists here. So if I type something there and hit enter, instead of it printing to the terminal, like it adds to the list here. So let's see where things are not working. So list form on submit, and we were calling the function here list form on submit. We had this list name, and we could app.add list name. Then we can go ahead and list underscore name. Actually, this is the element, so I can just quickly switch this one to element. So we are reading the list element value. Then I can go ahead and set the value back to an empty string. That is to make it empty. So let's go here. So list form, we add the list here. Then we can quickly do like this dot print list to doc. The moment we add a new list, then we call this function, and this function is going to re-render all our lists. So let's try to do that. So we say YouTube list. So we have YouTube list here. Yes, yes, I'm recording. So we could say YouTube list, delete it, and say another list. So something is happening. It's printing like one, two times for each of the elements. Maybe we come here and check what's not happening. So list item. So item plus list item, do that. This is really funny. So this where things get interesting. You need to debug that, and when you do, you will learn what's happening. So YouTube list, it's adding choice. Why is that the case? That's funny because I've not called the function twice, or it's called twice. Let's confirm. Copy find. No, it has only been called here. Then the error must be at this particular point. So I'm using map here. So let me see the output of list elements. Console.log the list elements. So it's showing me two list elements the moment I do that, meaning our map function somehow it's not working the way we expect it to work. So when you find out such a thing, then the best option is to use the basic for loop to test out your theory first. So for let I equals to 0, I is less than the this dot lists dot length, then you say I plus plus, then we can go ahead and do this. Like now attach a new list item to this list elements. And let's see the output. Save. And if I do that, uncut item is not defined. Yes. So we need to pass in the item at this particular point here where we do I. So I can just say const item equals to this dot lists index I. So this is one way of accessing items from an array. So this is an array here. This list here, this is what we are trying to render. This is an array. And if you recall well, I said an array is like a collection of objects. They can be just pure strings, integers, floats, longs, doubles, or any other data type can be contained in a list. That's I was talking about Python list in an array. So these arrays in Python are called lists, by the way. So this is an array, like this is a list of elements. This can be a list of, for example, in our case, groups of to-dos, and these groups we have called them just lists. Then after I have said where we were we here. So const item equals to this dot list index I. This means we are trying to access a single item from this lists array at a specific or at a given index. And in this case, at index I, for example, this dot list index 0. That's the first item. Then the next one will be, or the last one will be at index 10, even if the list's length is index 11. More about the list indexes and such. Yes. So if I may ask the length of this, the length of the above array is of course 9, but the last index or the last position or this number 9 is at position, you can say, is it 8? I believe. Yes. So the first element here is at index 0. The next one is at index 1. So indexes start at 0. It's same with is it days of the week? Yes, days of the week go from 0 to 6, not 1 to 7. So anything in programming, any index, whenever you hear the term index, it's probably starting at index 0. So yeah, more about this. I believe if we continue maybe using them, you can learn more, since we have not like taken time to learn more about arrays. And in fact, arrays do have a number of things to learn from. So for example, all these functions about arrays, we need to learn them. So we need to know how arrays work literally. But I'm not going to do that one purely right now. Maybe we schedule another class to talk about arrays. Okay, so I said here I'm getting an item at a certain position. So that position is what we have there, and we get the item. I pass it into my factory function, this list item, and it's going to return just this li that way. So let me just scroll up here. So if I save that and say YouTube like that, I'm still getting the two YouTube things. Where is this? So guys, help me, help me. I need to find out why this one is not working out well. I'm listening on submit. Oh, right. I'm sorry, guys. So my form also has the same function. This one here. So it's submitting it twice, meaning I submit it here on using the onSubmit attribute, and also I'm listening the onSubmit here using the add event listener. That's why I'm getting two lists at the same time. So sorry for that. So I need to get rid of this in order to use a single one, meaning my map also works. So let's try it out again. So I say here YouTube. Yeah, now I have YouTube, but it's not cleaning my input. Cannot create property value on string. Nope. I need to refresh this browser, and I'm still getting the error type error. Cannot create property value on string. But I'm just resetting it. What am I doing? Yeah, that one works. Except now I'm not able like to. Oh, actually it was here. And oh, sorry guys, I think this should have just remained the list name. The element is here, list input element. um, I reset it here. Yeah, that one is working out well. So this is the thing. So the moment I submit the form, I process the input. That is, take the list input element using the get element. That is get element by id list input. This element here, this input here. Then I go ahead, read its value, and I know the value is a list name. Of course, now I can assign it to a constant list name. And one might ask, why am I having constants in lowercase? Yes, so since these are just like inline constants, not global constants, then I can definitely use them like this inline, or I can just use let. There is no harm. But if you had something like a global constant, for example, if I were to come here and say const app underscore name, then I can just say here ToDo App. That could be a constant in a global perspective. So we get app.add list name, then we clear the input like that. So I say YouTube. The moment I do YouTube list like that, then I can hit that and it clears the input. But what I don't want it to do is like to continually submit this input. So if I do that and I hover, you can notice an empty list here, a list without a name. If I do another one, not another one, just submit it without doing anything, you realize there are two more empty lists. There are two ways to curb this. The first one is to come to your input here and then make sure you add another attribute called required. So you'll add it at the last, as the last attribute. I say required like this. So if I save like that, then I can be able to come here and say, now if I try to submit this, it's going to tell me, please fill out this field. This is one way of doing it. Or if you didn't use required here, then you can just come here and say this list name, read its value. So for example, if we were to console.log the list name value here, list name like that, I open my developer tools. So if I were to submit this form, you will notice it's like empty, nothing is here. So that means it's an empty string. Then I can just go ahead and use a condition here. If, so the condition will be if list name equals to an empty string, just do nothing, just return. But I want to do some extra task, so I can do add curly braces and say alert, uh, please enter list name. Then I return. So what happens here if I return at this particular point, the function will run from there. If it gets this return, it will break at that particular moment and it won't continue downwards. So I save that. So if I hit that, you will notice it says please enter list name, and it's not going to proceed like to add some empty list. You notice there's no list here if we were to hover through. So that's one way of, if you are not using required, you can use the other way, like use the JavaScript way. But what we do when we are building databases is we check both sides. In the backend, we just need to confirm whether we have our list name, otherwise just return. And also in the front end, because we want to show some visual cues or something visual to the user, we just add a required here besides the alert. For my case here, I used an alert, so I'm not going to use this alert because somehow it's not efficient. So when somebody does that, they have to like exit the alert and do the input again. So I'm avoiding the alert and just using the required attribute. And in the backend, now this can act as a backend. I'm just going to say, just break. Don't continue running the function, exit. So I try to submit, I get that one. So I say YouTube here, I hit enter, it adds YouTube. I say project X, I hit enter, it does that one. Just it prints it here to the list of to this lists in holder here. The next thing we want to do is If I click on YouTube, I want to activate YouTube list, and if I click on project X, then I activate that project. So how can we like achieve that? So to achieve that is we have our generator function here, then we need to activate or set the active list here. So to quickly, or to be able to do that, I'm going to add another constant here. I'm going to use this app name constant somewhere else or somewhere as we continue, but for now, let's have it like that. So here I'm going to say active list index. So in this case, I'm going to track the active list index, and to start with, it's going to be null. So if there's no active list index, just let it remain null. And for that, I'm also going to like maybe, and it might be good if I have it here, maybe, yeah. So instead of tracking the active list index out here, I'm going to track it within the class itself. So this dot active list index equals null. Currently, we don't have an active list. So if I may get rid of the index for now, we don't have an active list that will say this is the active list, render this list out. So, and then instead of just tracking the list, I'm going to track the index itself, the index of that list. So that is, as I said, according to arrays, we will start each element in array, and an array has a position, and that position is usually called an index. Yeah, so let's try to set an active list index. So to do that in our class, I'm going to add another method here called set active list, and this one is going to take in an index, and what it's going to do is just to quickly like maybe say this dot active list index equals to this given index. So if I pass in a given index, then make it the active list. So I scroll down to my, can it, no, let's just add it here as another utility function. Call this one function activate list. And in the activate list, I'm going to take also in an index. Then I'm going to take the ToDo App class. Wait, how did we call our class? It's called an app. We initiated it here called app. So that's what we are going to use. So app dot set active list to that index. So if I go back to the app set active list method here, we are going to add more functionality to make the active or show the active class. But for now, let's like maybe do something here, and let's just console.log the index here, console.log index. Now the index that we are going to get from the from this parameter, and therefore then what I'm going to do, we need to now use this function to activate the list. Where can we use it? You see we have our li here, and I said on click attribute goes to most of the elements. So I'm going to add an on click listener here, or an on click attribute, and I'm going to use I can use double quotes like that, or I can use a single quotes. So I choose double quotes, then I say my function, then in my function I'm going to pass in the index, that index of this like the index of this item. But this list item, let me go where I have called it here. I've only said the item itself, just the item, not the index of the item. We need also to be able to take care of the exact position of that item. Then the second parameter I can add here is the I, that is the position or the index of that list. Then I can come down here and say in the list item, there's another second parameter. I say item position like that. So this item position is what I'm going to pass in here. And the best way, since I'm using or doing string concatenation or joining strings together, I'm using this type of format using the backticks. Then I can just say $sign, curly braces, pass in the position. So that means the moment this item has been added to the DOM, it will have this method on it. So let's try it out. Currently, there are no end lists. So I open my developer tools, say here YouTube, and add it. So the moment I add YouTube, we see that the element, how it's looking, and we can notice the method here is activate list with 0. So if I go to the element itself or to the elements and look at the what we have in the elements, so I'm going to exactly select this YouTube list element or select it like that. You notice it has the onClick attribute here with this method called activate list or this function, and it has an index of 0. So let's like click on it and see the output or what we get. If I click on YouTube, then you notice it's printing out 0. It means that our method is being called out correctly. So we can say our active list currently is YouTube based on the index or based on the position. At position 0, YouTube has been activated. Now, once we activate YouTube like this, we need to render out here and say YouTube has been activated. So I'm going to come here to our application and they say here the title here is saying YouTube list. So instead of just saying YouTube list, I'm going to add an ID here and I say list title like that. So it means I'm going to replace this list title with the right list. And instead of saying YouTube list, I'm going to say select list. So this means this will be the placeholder text or the placeholder content before I activate or I select any list. So let's go and select that list or yeah, that list title. So in our activate list here, I'm going to say const active list equals to this dot lists at that particular index. The moment we have that, then I can just go ahead and in our I can create another method here to render the title. So render list title like that. And this method, it's definitely taking nothing in, and I can just say const list title holder. So that this element that we added the list title ID equals to get the element. Now this is the custom method we are using, list title. Then what we are going to do is just like copy that, delete any extra spaces. Oh, might get back there. Paste it there. Now we have active list equals to this dot lists. Now instead of saying index 0, we say this dot active list index like that. Now we can say we have the active list. Then I can just say list underscore title holder, list title holder dot. So there are two ways of doing that. You can say dot inner HTML or you can say dot text content. So it's good to use dot text content like that instead of dot inner HTML. In terms of security, when you say inner HTML, then it means your site is vulnerable to cross-site scripting. That means somebody can write malicious code to export content from your website without your knowledge, while pretending like your site will be pretending it's the one calling your API or calling your other resource. So it's not good to just say inner HTML. So though sometimes you can use inner HTML, but for this case, for example, here I have said inner HTML because I'm rendering HTML elements. But remember, when you are rendering HTML elements, you need to sanitize them. More about security later on. Believe that's the last topic, but just know about these things. So I'm going to say text content because it's just a text content. It will be the active list. So let's look at the list how it looks like. So we said when we were adding a list, it's going to have this dot list, then we have this generator function that's going to generate a list, and it's going to return an object that contains the list name and the to-do. So I'm supposed to read it from the list name. So I can just say this list title holder dot text content equals to active list. This one I need to say active list dot text content, not text content dot list name, like that. So we say that one is working, but we need to call the function. Where can we call the function? So this function can be called where we initiated the, or where we are changing the active list here. For example, we can call it there, and that is we call it using the this keyword, this dot render list title. The moment we activate a list, then just render it. So here we try it out. I say YouTube, I hit enter. If I select YouTube, now we see YouTube has been activated on the other side. Now that you can say YouTube is the active one, then we need now to render its to-dos. So far we can say we have been able to select or activate a list correctly without errors. If I were to say another list here, another list like that, then I can click on it and it will activate that list correctly. So we can say so far we are good in activating a list or selecting a list. But one more thing to take care of. The moment I select YouTube, yes, YouTube is active, but on the other side, we need also to activate YouTube, or like change the classes. If you were here from the start, we said we need to say the same class or something should be added to this YouTube as it do this list, do this YouTube list item as it is the active one. If it's there another list, then another list should be active. That's where we go to the next place and say, okay, then if we do that, then we need to activate this exact element for it to look active. How can we achieve that? So here I said this is the method, but I'm forced to go back to the other method like that because I believe it should work out. Just confirming. Yeah. Oh, I need to pass in the index. So in this case, to get the index, we are using the map method. The map method also takes in the item, and also it can take in the index and also the output. But we don't have that callback thing or the last item, the array. So it's better to just say the index. Oh, and we take that index and pass it here. So the index will be equal to the same as this I here. It will also start with 0, 1 upwards. So let's try it out. Do that. Select it. We have that one selected. Yes, I can just delete this one. This for loop. We just use map instead. So how can we achieve or how can we like activate the exact list element? This one. How can we say this one should now have the class of active class? How can we do that one? Because we really don't know these elements the way they are arranged on the browser or the way they will be, then the best way is maybe to go ahead and add more attributes to the list element itself and see whether it will maybe work out. So that is when we are rendering out this list element, we need like to track it down. The moment it is clicked, then we can activate it. So the best way I can say is I'm going to add another attribute here called data list. Is it data list? No. Yeah, it can be data list. List ID, list name, or active list. So in this case, I'm just going to say list equals to list underscore. I close it and I'm going to say $, and I'm going to pass in the item position here. So in this case, if I do this, save, open the console or the developer tools, I add my list here. If I do that and select it or see its attributes, we realize that it has this another attribute here called data dash list equals to list underscore zero. Then we can say exactly, oh, this is list zero. If it has been clicked, then we can read this attribute and activate the list item. Currently, you can't really tell whether it has been activated. So the moment we do that, then I can say we do another method here that is called like activate list, activate active list. So if I say that, then I'm going to loop through the given lists elements, then maybe find something. So const active list equals to, we know exactly how our list is formatted, or this data list. It is list underscore zero. Then I can be able to read the exactly that by recreating it. And I say this dot active list index. So this one will give us an output, for example, list underscore zero, or list underscore one, or list underscore two, depending on the active list. Then we can be able to read it from the DOM. So how can we read it? So what we are going to do is document, let's say const active list item equals to document dot query selector. So I'm exactly going to select that. So what I'm going to select? I'm going to select data, not query selector. Get element by attribute, element by, is it attribute name? This is really funny. Anybody who can help me through here? I want to select this attribute, this data list attribute. Let me see it. Here we go. This one. I want to select an element that has data dash list equals to that one. Document dot set attributes, create attribute, create attribute. Yeah, by class could work out, but by class it means we are going to select all of these list items. So yes, by ID, yes, that's a good suggestion. So yes, ID works out. Let's go with ID because that sounds to be the easiest one. Hiyo ingine nimesahau. So there are many ways, as I said before, when we were starting on working the documents, there are many methods of selecting elements. Document dot get element by. So we have this get element by, and we also have query selector, and also we have the other one called something like attribute, get element by a specific attribute. So let's get element by ID. So I'm going to use get element, and I'm going to pass in the active list like that. But you will notice something, our list items here don't have IDs on them here. They have data list, they have class data list, and on click. Yes, yes. Okay, you should, yeah. Okay, so uh, just a quick search, maybe it can help us. The yes, get element by attribute. So this one can help us quickly. Yeah, here they are saying my attribute equals to value. Oh, that one, just document dot query selector. Would I prefer we just try it out? Why skip it? Yeah, they are just saying like this, so you just type in the entire thing. Yeah, I believe that that's what I was missing. Instead of us changing this one to ID, let's leave it at data list and we can quickly select it by that. So here where we are selecting, so instead of getting element document dot query selector, um, and I'm going to select that using backticks. I pass in my data dash, yes. So data list equals to, yeah, you have to get these errors in order to learn. Yeah, so I'm going to pass in here active list like that. Let's just maybe say console.log this out. Console.log the active list item. And in order for us to see this one out, then we need to call this method. And I'm going just to call it here, just below here, and say this dot that. Let's see what we get out. To the console, add a list, say that. Then we get nothing. Better to add some context here. So list element like that, and come back, add another one. Is our method really being called? Then it should either fail or work out. Oh, I should do like a dollar sign here. Paste that one in. That method is not being, oh, I need to click that one so that I can invoke it. Yes. So it has printed out this one, meaning we are able to select this element from the DOM correctly. So the next thing we are going to do is we have this active list item. To be secure, the best thing you usually do is check whether it exists in the DOM, like that if active list item. And in this case, you can check, you can see that I have not used like it's not equal to null, or it's not equal to something like undefined, undefined. So the reason as to why I usually don't do like this, you might miss another thing here. So it's just better to just check whether, yes, okay, yes, eh, yes. Okay, so let me explain it. Unajua tumekuwa tukitumia get element by id. By the way, this is like a reusable function or a factory function or a generator function. So we created this method where we pass in an ID and we just like, it's the normal, even if we were to take that one and use it directly here. Here where we are selecting the holder itself. For example, this one. We could just use it like this, and instead we just say list. Was it list holder? Whichever it was. We could have just selected that list holder, this one. This one, actually it's list. Yeah, list. We could have just selected list like that. Get element by ID, list, that's the list holder. Then, after we look through all the list items that we have in this list here, on top here of here, then we just like add them using inner HTML. If I were to say text content here, uh, you will see what will happen if I do that. You will notice HTML being just the text content being rendered out here, not the list items. That's why we use inner HTML. Inner HTML converts anything that is in a string format to HTML readable. What the browser can understand as HTML. So that's why I said text content and inner HTML, they can be used interchangeably. So The next thing I've done here is, instead of first like selecting get element by ID list, I've went ahead and said, no, let's try out something else. Let's try out query selector, and we are selecting based on an attribute, on a given attribute name. So if I were to copy that maybe, and yes, okay. So okay, so this is the thing. Now we are no longer using like the ID here, query selector using ID or getting element by ID. We have used another terminology, query selector, and we are selecting a specific attribute. So this means just go to the DOM, go back to the DOM here, and select an element that has this data matching and this attribute matching. If ID equals to 1, if it matches, that's what we want to bring it back. We could do the same with an ID, so let me just illustrate that one quickly too. So const active list item, a list item, active list item equals to, so I have said this get element function is going to return just and that element. It's similar to document dot get element by ID. So instead of us writing the entire thing like this, I've decided, oh, let's just use a short method that takes in that ID instead and returns as the element. So we are going to say here the ID in this case will be the active list, this one here, that list underscore zero. But as I said, when we were creating our list items, we didn't pass in any ID. Then it's best if we pass in it in here now. ID equals to, then I just copy from here up to there. Now I've added a specific ID to each of these list items. Now, if I were to add several of them like this, maybe it can help us like that. And I open my elements tab here. I scroll down like that. Uh, and now I select these items. Here we are. Now, if you look at our items, you realize they have specific or unique IDs. This is list 0, list 1, list 2, list 3, list 4. Same with the data dash list. They have uniqueness. The ID is unique. Meaning, if I go to the DOM and select an element with this ID, then I can be able to say, oh, this exists, or I can be able to find it because it's unique. So let's see what we have there. So I have selected that element, where is it here, using get element by ID. Then I can say if that element exists, then go ahead, and if the active element exists, then you can alter the classes, just alter its classes and maybe change them a bit. So I can just go ahead and say dot class list dot. So I need to add a class list or remove a class list. So the best thing I'm going to do, or the thing I'm going to do here, is I'm going to add another class there called active class, like that. If you recall, when we started, we said um, if you add an active class to any of the list items like that, it's going to highlight or select that list item. Like add that some styles from the active. So let's see what our active is here. Active. Yeah. So if you find the list item that is active, just maybe change its background color and make it fixed to this gradient and change its color to white. So that's what we have done here, the active class. So that's how you add classes from JavaScript. There's another method. Instead of us adding this like from the back end, okay, from the styles here, then we could have maybe gone ahead, and instead of doing like that, we could have just said active list item dot style dot maybe color, set the color to white, and also set the background color, so background. and maybe set it to red. So we could have done it so that we can say this is the active item. If I do that, you realize it's saying a color of white and a background of red. It means I have activated that specific item. But what if we had several other items like that? You realize the moment we have this, like the moment we add an item, it re-renders all the items and it removes the active class, but we still have our active element here. Why is it removing it from here? It's because the moment we add a new list item, we re-render the all the elements here. Where is it? Here. We re-render the where is it? Where do we add an yeah, here. What we do the moment we add a new something to the list, we re-render, like we say this dot print list to doc, meaning we are not like really activating the exact active element here. So it's like deleting all the elements and adding them based in this method here. This method, what it does, it changes inner HTML completely. Whatever is in there in that list folder, delete it and replace it with this new new things. So, but in our case, we never like said, okay, we need like to say the active item and make it or leave it being active. So that's something we can talk about later, but let me talk about this one. So class list, we have added another class there called active class. So I'm going to just delete my custom styles here and remain with the active class, which has predefined styles. So if you recall, the active class is the same as the hover class here. The background of that background with the color of white. That's the active class, what we have learned from here. So we have activated this class or added the active class there. So I'm going to add several ones and I show you the next problem we might have. So we have several of these. I click in this one, it is been selected as the active one. I click on the other one, it has been selected as the active one, and this one is still active. You might notice a slight difference in the changes here, but I just reload and do the right names. So I say here YouTube, enter. I add another one like project X, enter. I say book one, enter. I say landmark. I'm just trying to find some specific, just random names. So we have this list here. I say YouTube, YouTube has been activated. I say Project X has been activated. I say book, book has been activated. I say landmark, landmark has been activated or selected. But you realize all of them have taken the same, like they all have the active class with them. So, oh, oh. So if I were to come here and inspect the page and look at these elements, for example, you realize they all have the active class with them. So this is not what we want. We want if I select YouTube, activate YouTube and remove or deactivate the rest. If I click on Project X, activate Project X and deactivate the rest. If I click on Book 1, do the same. Yes. Okay. Thank you. So that's how you do. So maybe anybody with the question to that point before we go ahead and deactivate the rest while we activate a single one. Okay, I believe we have only 15 minutes, so let's make it worth it. And it will be good if you go through the video, and it's best and far better if you start from the first video where we did this to do application, then where we tried to do some JavaScript a bit, then we went ahead to do the last class. I think we did something a bit again. So it's good if you go through this series. It's actually contained within the other series of, I'll show you the at the end of this class. So what I'm going to do here is, if I click on project X, I only want project X to be active. The rest should be inactive. So how can we achieve that? So to best achieve that is, we are activating that item here, but we also want to deactivate the rest. So I'm going to write another function here, a utility function that will help us deactivate the rest. So I'm going to say deactivate all list items. So this is a function, do that. So I'm going to select all the list elements, the list items. So const list items equals to document dot query selector all. Now I'm going to select all of them, anything that has this class of list item. So if I do that, maybe to show you the class I'm talking about, uh, do that. So if I go back and select a single one, you realize they all have a class of list item, list item, list item. So what I want is select all of them and deactivate them, remove any class that is there that is active class. So the moment I have selected all of them like that, I'm going to loop through them. So list items dot, I can use the another loop called for each, and this one is kind of it takes in the callback function. Just by that, you just go ahead and say the value, you have the the value. The value in this case is the element. We have the key, and the last one is the node list. But currently we are not really dealing with the key or the node list. We just want the value. Then I'm going to use the common, as I said, arrow function. We will be using this much. So I'm going to change this one to element to be secure instead of value. So the moment I have that element, I'm just going to say element dot class list dot remove active. So it's just going to say remove the active class from this element. If it's there, just remove it. Don't care whether it's there or not, just remove it. So how can we use this function? Check the function, go up, you see where we are activating our list. Before we activate the list here, then I can just go ahead here and say deactivate all the list items. Make sure none of them has the active class on it. So if I were to add multiple of them like that, then if I click on that one, it's going to activate it. It's better if I exit that one. It's going to activate it. And if I click on that one, our method is not working. Why? So we go back to the console. It's saying cannot read properties of undefined reading length. Oh, this is video recorder, not our method actually. So let's console log something and see whether our method is being called down here or it's not. So just come down here and say console.log being reached. Let's say that's the first place where you could say, okay, let's debug. So you console log out something. If I click on that, it's saying I'm being reached. Oh, then that means we reach up to this point. And what happens here? Seems it's not working. So let's go ahead and say console.log I'm being reached to. So if it logs out the two terms, then we can say our method to that point it's like maybe. So it's saying I'm being reached, and it's not saying I'm being reached to, meaning our for each method is not working out. Why is that not working out? So sometimes that's where it comes with the choice of loops. Sometimes they work, sometimes they don't. So let me see why it's not working. So I hover over there and it's saying for each just a callback function with the value and performs the specified action for each node in a list, but it's not working. So, and I can't say why it's not working. That's the fun of programming. So the next one is the key, and the other one is the parent. No, I don't want the parent. I just want to understand why this is not working. Let's debug it. Google is a friend, so list elements for each not working. So that's the farthest you can do for each not working when blue for loop does with an array. So just go here and see what happens for each. It iterates over indexes, not over properties. Your code. So it means we are iterating over indexes. That sounds like funny. Not that ain't good. I can't really say why it's not working because this is an element and it's saying it's an element, so should work by default. So instead, I'm just going to convert this method to another to convert this to just confirm whether it's working, or just use a normal for. So let index change that one to I element. This is not that, so just take the list items dot length, get the exact element, and then change its class list. And instead, even maybe say console.log, I'm being reached to there. So we are going to just test out that one and see whether it's working, and we shall get back to the for each loop later. So I'm being reached, so I'm not being reached. Why is that not the case? It means that we are not like getting the list items. That makes sense because nobody could tell me if I'm selecting all I needed to select, if it's a class or an ID or a given attribute like that uh, value. So this was my error. So whenever you are using query selector and the query selector all, you need to make sure whatever you are selecting here, you are selecting the right thing. So I was selecting list items, but I don't know what I was selecting. Like if I were to print out this one, console.log list items like that, uh, you will notice like it's no value. It's saying an odd list, the array is 0, the length is 0. Reason being, when I'm selecting here, I need to add the dot to specify I'm selecting all elements that have a class of or a class name of list item. Don't forget this, otherwise you will be like me saying for each is not working. So yes, I can refer back my functions like that and test it out again. And select that, yeah, I'm being reached. Then select the other one, I'm being reached. Select the other one, I'm being reached. And I'm being reached too. Meaning now our function is working well and it's selecting the exact list that we want it selected. So also let's check out whether our for loop is also working because they are similar. So if I were to leave it that way, add some lists here like that, then select that, not working. Wait. Oh, here's another thing. At this particular point, I'm saying array index I. So if I were to go to the console, you will notice a lot of errors. Array is not defined. Array is not defined. The moment I click, I get that error. Array is not defined. Because in this case, we are not iterating over the array, or we are not getting a specific item from an array, but rather from this list items array. Otherwise, particularly this array is not like working, or it's not defined. So add something. So for loop. Yes, our for loop is also working very well. So minor things or things to watch out when selecting, don't miss what you are selecting. If it's an ID and you can't select all with an ID, just do that, query selector, hash, and if it's all, use classes, dot, like that, dot, list item. That way, you won't find yourself in several problems. You will be like me, let's go for Google. But it's good if you get an error, just go to Google, confirm whether you are right or wrong, then come back to rectify whenever you believe or you saw like you have problems or rectify things. The moment I read that for each iterates over indexes, I didn't feel right because yes, it doesn't feel right. Yes, Robin. Yeah. If you Google into your friend, then you are not going to make it. You get an error, find Google. Don't use ChatGPT kindly. Currently ChatGPT iko na mashida mingi sana. So you might go there and instead of it just giving you a simple for loop like this, it might give you an extended for loop that is not what you want. So don't use ChatGPT or any AI related thing. Just use, because if you are on learning mode, it's better you use Google. You get more options from different or more views from different users. ChatGPT will do the same if you prompt it with the same thing several times, but just use Google, not ChatGPT. Google and Stack Overflow, MDN or W3 schools. I'm leaving this one out here. It will just remain there so that we can like, okay, if you are going through the code or through the video, you can test out the methods. And for each is also another method or another loop that works like the for loop, or it works like map, and also it works like a filter. So all these they do loops, but they are specifically for arrays. Map and filter are specifically for arrays. But if you are just looping through normal arrays, of course, you can also use while, but while might not work out well. Your machine might hang. And also remember, when you are writing your for loops, don't ever do this. Chini yako itahang hadi ushangae. So if you do three semicolons and leave it, you are going to shut down your machine and start afresh. That is that. Whatever I'm saying here is that when you are doing loops, be careful. Don't leave open-ended loops. Loops need to be closed at some point. For example, this one it's starting at 0 and it's ending at the length of the array. So maybe it's starting from zero and ending at maybe index 10. If you let it continue running to infinity, machine yako, even if you have the best, unless you have a quantum machine, it will hang. So don't leave it running like that. That is in case you ever try to use a loop called while loop, which usually goes while everything is true, do something. So this one will hang or make your machine go off. So don't leave open-ended loops. Close your loops. Have a condition that makes sure that that loop exists. Yes. Any question? Addition? Yes. So in yeah. So always remember, while loop with the JavaScript not so common. It's common with the Java C and C++ and such like languages. Yes, there was a hand somewhere. At do what? Come up again. So for example, you are saying if I have YouTube here and I've selected it, you don't have to have it selected like this. So you just want this one to be the default one, that is irudi default iseme select list. Okay, so that one wasn't in my plan, but let's do that one. So if you have a selected list like this, this is the active list, and if you were to have another list here, maybe you will still, if you have selected one, it will still remain to be active. So there's one thing you can do to make it not active. So let's go to our indexes, our JS file here. We said we are saying here we are saying render list title, and we said get the index and activate it. And in fact, this one we never checked it, so it's better if we do now the checks here. So we said this active list index by default, it starts with a null value, like nothing, null, or we can just leave it like that. But I decided let it be null so that we can do some checks. So if you do that, then if here where we render our title, instead of just like using our index directly like this, we need to make sure like that that one exists first. So if it exists, then we can do the render like that. In fact, somebody said instead of us writing our code, all our entire code in our if statement like this, it's better to move it out. So I'm just showing you quick tips here. So if you have an if loop like yenye ina wrap your entire function, so it's better you just like do that and just say if that list active is not there, this is negation not. If it's null, that is the case, just return, do nothing. And if it exists, then you can continue to run the function normally. But at this particular point, I said whenever a return function has been encountered, a return keyword has been encountered in a function, then it automatically breaks at that particular point and exits, like it returns that value. By default, all functions have this like return, but no, not they don't have. By default, they are void, they are returning nothing. But the moment they encounter a return, that's where they are going to return, like to pause the execution and return. It's like ulikuwa unaenda mahali ukapigiwa simu ukaambiwa rudi, ni hivyo unafanya tu unarudi. So the exact function it was called, ikafika hapa ikakutana na return juu hakukuwa na index, the index was null, then ikaritania hapo, ikarudi tu ikasema nimefika mahali nilikuwa naenda, or I've been called back, let me get back. So how can we make our item not to be active? That's really not that easy, but let's do it. It will add to a list of things that are more. So we said render list title here. Then we are going to say no, where's the activate method? Set active list. So here I'm going to add another method called, we have set active list and unset active list. So it's not going to take any parameter, and what we are going to just say this dot active list index equals to just say null. That's how you reset. When we were setting, we said set it to an index. Now we are resetting to null, and then what we're going to do here is copy these two methods and just paste them here. Like now, render the list title afresh. So in this case, we said here, in case there is no list index breakout, but I have a good thing to use here. So just add the curly braces and return. Then here say we had this list holder method here, or function thing here, paste it there and set the text content now to the original text content, select list, like that. So with this, it means the moment this method is called, it's just going to check if the active list index is null, it's going to set the list to an empty thing, and also it's also going to like render the list title, that is this one. Just it's like resetting, and also it's going to activate the active list. But in this case, we are saying activate an active list without a, and our index is null. So let's go to this method also and change it a bit so that it can be able to take care of this active list index. As I said, you can use the same methodology we used on top here, like check whether this one exists, then go ahead to do something. So I'm going to do that just as the first thing actually on top here. Check if this dot list index is equals to null. That's what I actually mean by using the negation. That's the exclamation mark behind this list index. So if it's null, then I don't want to just set the list title. I just go ahead and say deactivate all list items. So this one is going to deactivate all the list items. Then how can we use our unset active list method so that it can be able to deactivate it? So what we can do here is to add another button that can deactivate it, like an X. So let's do like an X here that's going to deactivate it. So we are just going to do close or something at the title here. So how can we achieve that? We go back to our code. Where is the title? Select list is the title here, and we have the to-dos title here. Then I can actually go in and say a button, and the class of this is going to be btn close, just btn close. Then I'm going to type in close like that. So if I save that, you'll notice our close button is below our select list here. We needed to put it at the end here and change its colors a bit. So let's go, and first we need to find our to-dos title. Here, control find to-dos title. Here it is. Where is it? The exact thing. Actually, this one here. Then I'm going to do like add more attributes. So that is display to flex, line items to the center, justify content to the center also. So let's see what we have. Everything is justified to the center. That's not good. I need to like put them aside. So instead of justify content center, I'm going to use justify content space between, like that. So that one is going to set the title here and the button at the end here. Let's quickly style our button. It's called the close btn. So first we just get rid of the border none. Next we set the background color to be totally white. We set the color to be black. Of course it's black, there's no need of us fitting the color. Set the border radius to something like 10 px. Maybe add some slight padding of top of 4 pixels and top bottom of 4 pixels, left right of 10 px. Our close btn not working, meaning we didn't select the right thing. It's called btn close. Yeah, just remember that too. Not close btn, but rather button close btn close. That's how our button looks like. And we also need to like change the cursor to pointer, and also we can just say it's too small but good. The border radius too large, so just reduce it to 4 px. And now we have a nice looking button here. Let's add some style on hover. Maybe that's this a bit of css here. So our btn close and hover, I want it to have something like just scale. So scale is a standalone property actually. You can just scale it here at 1.05 and it will just work out well like that. But before scale was a standalone, we used to say something like transform, and we could just say scale 1.05. Like increase its size a bit, that's what happens. Then something to add on about scaling, you could do so. You could just say standalone or using transform. I can also add here transition. And I'm going to say all, and I'm going to say set the time 0.03 seconds, and I'm going to say let's have it at linear, so it scales in out linearly at that particular time. Let's maybe increase it a bit. Scale, if you look at my scale, it's like zooming in slowly. Then the value was too small and too large, so maybe 0.5. Yeah. So if I click on this close, I want to deselect my active list. So I need to make a function that will be called on this button click. So let's like do on click here, on click, deselect active list. So this is a method or a function. I'm going to copy it and move it to my function, to my utilities down here, and say function deselect active that. Then I'm going to call the app dot unset active list like that. So if I click that, nothing is happening. But if we try to say maybe YouTube, maybe Instagram, maybe Twitter. So if I have all those and I select you, what's not happening here? Everything is happening at the same time and nothing is working. Let's just quickly get the error. It's saying nope. Okay, there's no active error that we are seeing here, meaning it's like somehow we are not like working out the way it should. So let's see where our error is at. We have an set list here, and actually it should be called at a single place, not several times. Yes. Let's see why it's not working or why it's not selecting. So the best thing is this, the code we have added, and it has brought problems. Comment it out. Not working, meaning our list elements are not working either. Activate list. So let's find the activate list method, this one, and try maybe to say console.log active list, and maybe say index. And after that, I'm going to console log the app itself and see what it has in it. So do that. Go to the console, clear it, add, select it. Then we have an active list that's index 0. Yes, that's good. We have the active list index. Yes, index 0. And this is the only one that we have. Then it means on the way down, something happened to our active method. So let's see what happened. So the best way is to go back to the method itself, where I see it, this one. It's called set active list, and we have the render list title. Not this return. So I need maybe to render this one out and see its value. Console.log, that one active list index. So do that, select active list and quote. Oh, I need to use this here. So do that, select, it's saying 0. Oh, actually 0 equates to false. So I might need to change this one. So let's add another one. This one activates, this one doesn't. This one activates, this one doesn't. From the group or from the class, who can tell us why anything that is at index 0 is not working according to our code here? Any hint? Anybody with a hint why it's not working or why it's not activating any item that is at index 0? Anybody with a hint? Okay, so yes. Somebody has unmuted. Maybe you can go ahead and say something. Okay, so this brings us back somewhere where we were when we were talking about data types. We said also we have data types called booleans. So what are booleans? Booleans are the true or false things. So is it either true or false? So what we have here is, if I say like let's do something here. Let's okay, let's maybe console.log some things. We don't have to write console.log when we are using the console. So true or false are bytes, and they are usually, they are 1 byte, yeah, 1 byte, 0 or 1. So true, let me go back to my VS Code here, maybe write something here. So what we need to know is that whenever we see true, just know this is equals to 1. And whenever we see false, just know this is equals to 0. So sometimes in the database, this might be presented as 0 and 1. 1 meaning true, 0 meaning false. And what we have done when we are doing if statements, we always say if true, say something, do something. So you can console.log something. And if it's false, uh, console.log or console.warn something else. So if I save that, we have something here, and the false will never go ahead and say false till it has been called, and it's so false won't work out, like it won't bring it won't show anything. But if we say if false equals to 0, do something, not working. But let's maybe roll back there. It's saying something else. So you realize that false equals to 0, but you cannot equate it to like the exact equation, like this is the checking a type and also checking the equality. So, and this one is just checking equality. Two equal signs is just for equality. The equal signs is also checks equality and type. So whenever you say this one, remember false is equals to 0 if you use two equal signs, and that's what we are getting up here. Where is it? Here where we are saying if no list. So it's just saying, okay, this is true. Yes. Yeah. So what I'm just saying here is that false equals to 0 and true equals to 1. So the moment we just say here, we equate to false, otherwise you need to run or to evaluate this statement to true. Everything here, these conditions that you pass in here, they have to be true in order for whatever you have said here for it to work. The moment it hits false, it can't work. So it just fails, and actually it returns this actually. So that's what happened. And 0 is false. Index 0 is false. So it was iterating through indexes, and it got index 0. It evaluated it to false. The moment it got false, it broke. It exited. So instead of us like doing whatever was saying before, like uh, if there's no this active list index, whatever was saying like this one might not be good in this case because we are using indexes, and the 0 is equals to false, and this one is going to be evaluated to true. In fact, the moment it gets like this, and if you say not false equals to true. So if not 0, it's going to evaluate to true, and the moment it evaluates to true, this code runs. So instead of us saying this dot active list index, this one is going to evaluate index 0 as true if you negate it. So false times false negate, you get the other thing. Okay, I don't know. So the moment you negate false, you get true. You negate true, you get false. Yeah, so instead of us doing that, because we exactly know what we are dealing with, we are just going to say if this dot active list index is equal to null, run this code. The same will be used here. Yes. Yeah, so negative, negative, positive, negative, positive, negative. False is always the winner. But whenever you negate false, okay, let me just avoid the math because the math here might not math. So if I come here and say not false like this, automatically it's going to evaluate to true and it's going to run something else. And if I come here and I say not true, it's going to say false. It's going to revert it to false, and it means the first console.log is not going to work. So remember, whenever you negate a boolean, you get the opposite. So whenever I negate 0, like that, I get something else. Whenever I negate 1, like that, I get it does not work. So this one has to be true. Otherwise, for the moment like this, if I say if 1, it's going to work out. It's going to say something. If not 1, it's going to revert it. So 1 and 0 can be used as true and false. Yes. Yes, Robin. Okay. Oh, yes. Yeah. So that's about the negation. If you negate, it's ni ile tu venye Robin anasema the normal math. You negate a positive, it becomes negative. But you cannot negate a negative. Okay, you negate a negative, it becomes, yeah. You negate a negative, it becomes positive. So that's what we have. So if we test out now our code, say the first list, second list, third list, and I select index 0 is going to be active like that. Select index 1, it's going to be active. Select index 2, it's going to be active. And if I deselect, nothing is working. Who can tell us why? So I'm just going to present my button. This is my button here and my list here. Where is it? My deselect is here, and this is the rest of the code. Anyways, to help quickly, I documented them out here. The unset active list nilikuwa nimecomment out hiyo code yote yenye nafanya hiyo kazi yote. So just to show, I'm just quickly going to do your YouTube, I do Instagram, I do Twitter, like that. So if I select YouTube, deselect, it's going to deselect that. Select Instagram, deselect, it's going to deselect everything. Do that, it's working. So John, I don't know whether I've answered your question at this part of deselecting the active list. Yes. Okay. So maybe to recap on of whatever we have done today, because actually today we were also to like to do some list input here. We enter some lists or some tasks, some to dos. We add and we let them. Oh, I'm back to the home page. We add and load them here. Maybe today it's not going to work out, but let me just recap on whatever we did today so that if you followed yesterday's or Friday's, yes, Friday's tutorial, maybe this one can help you maybe link up because it'll divert Sana. I went to different directions on the way. So whatever we have covered today is we have talked about selecting elements, that is using a different selector, that's query selector, and selecting attributes specific. And also we have talked about activating a single active list or selecting the active list and making it active using the class list method on elements. This, what is that method? This one here. Uh, this method here, the class list method on an element and adding a class to it. And also we have talked about removing specific classes from elements using the remove class or the remove method. And also we have talked about working with arrays a bit, and we have talked a little bit about booleans, that's true and false, that's the zeros and ones. And also what is it again? Yes, just the thought. Yeah, I believe that's the new thing. The other thing the other day we had talked about form submission, listening on form submission events, and also on click events and other events. Yeah, I don't know whether there's something I've left out for today. Just a few things that we have covered today. So maybe somebody to add on something that I've left out, or somebody with a question or an addition. I don't know. Is Cosmos around? Oh, yes. Mm.